मुझे नहीं, जो मैं आप सीखने जाते हो मुझे पहली बार है.
Which is first one? Is that the first one?
That's 31.
Yeah.
चाहिए किसी को?
31.
ये तो क्लियर करें नवंबर का डेट नवंबर.
So I've got the date.
तो आज 18 isn't it?
It's 18, yeah. Okay. Let's start.
तो ये बॉक्स है.
और इतने सारे प्रश्न.
इसकी क्या जरूरत थी?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Okay, let's continue. So we are on Hadith al-Hadi wa Thalathun, which is Hadith number 31. Okay, mashallah, we've got just 10 months here, 10 Hadiths nearly, we nearly finished the book. Okay, so let's read this one. Fairly straightforward. عن أبي العباس سعد بن سهل الساعدي رضي الله تعالى عنه قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله دلني على عمل إذا عملته أحبني الله وأحبني الناس فقال ازهد في الدنيا يحبك الله وازهد فيما عند الناس يحبك الناس. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه وغيره بأسانيد حسنة. Okay, straightforward hadith. Who's going to volunteer?
I'll put my glasses on, I'll try.
Go.
On the authority of Abu al-Abbas Sa'd bin Sa'd al-Sa'di, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, a man came to the Prophet, may the blessings and peace of Allah be upon him, and said, O Messenger of Allah, direct me to an act which, if I do it, will cause Allah to love me and people to love me. He said, renounce the world and Allah will love you, and renounce what people possess and people will love you.
Okay, very nice. So I think the hadith is fairly straightforward, so it's going to not require much commentary, and then we can hopefully do the following hadith at the same time. So the first thing is the wording Ja'a Rajulun. So here it doesn't mention who the person is, it just says Ja'a Rajulun. A person came to the Prophet ﷺ. So here we find sometimes that not mentioning the name is not important. So they don't always mention every single person's name. So it was left unknown. So a person came to the Prophet ﷺ, asked him, Dulluni, he asked him, give me some advice. Once again, asking for advice, guide me to an action. That if I do this action, then Allah will love me. And he said, not just that, but also the people around me, they will also love me. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he responded. And he said his advice was, number one, izhad fi dunya. So our topic today for this hadith is the topic of Azuhd. Okay, I've written it on the board, Azuhd. And Zuhd is a topic that's misunderstood. That's also very important. Azuhd fi dunya, ar-raghba anha. So what does Zuhd really mean? It means it is the having the lack of desire for this world, being away from this world, abstaining from the world. That's what Zuhd means. So here the Prophet ﷺ is saying, abstain from the dunya. Don't desire the dunya so much. Abstain from the dunya. وَأَنْ لَا يَتَنَاوَلَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْهَا إِلَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ. And that a person only is engaged in the dunya with that which he knows is going to benefit him in the akhirah. That's Zuhd in a nutshell. Okay, so abstaining from the world and only engaging in those things that will bring you benefit in the hereafter. That is Zuhd. Furthermore, it is also leaving off those things that will cause you harm in this world and cause you harm in the hereafter. That's by default. Okay. So we can also see from this very fact that the preference is given to the akhirah over the dunya. That the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that our attachment to the hereafter should be more stronger than it is to this dunya. The Prophet ﷺ in one hadith says, رَقَعَةَ الْفَجْرِ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَمَا فِيهَا. That the 2 rak'ah you pray before the obligatory prayers of Fajr, the 2 sunnah prayers you pray, are more virtuous than the whole of the dunya and that which it contains. Now, why did he say that? It's just to show you that the dunya really has no real value, that it's nothing. You pray 2 rak'ah and you get everything that the dunya contains. So we need to detach our hearts from the dunya, especially from that which has no direct benefit to us. Furthermore, the Prophet said, "Izhad fima inda al-nas yuhibbuka al-nas." Now here, the answer to the question about how will people love me? So the first thing we learn is that our primary objective is to attain Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's love. That's what we are trying to achieve in this world. But at the same time, it's also permissible for us to seek the love of people. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as that's geared for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, what does he say? The Prophet says, "Idhad fima inda nas," that don't desire everything that everybody has. So whatever material wealth or properties that you see other people having, don't desire it all the time. If you show that you have no concern or you have no desire for what people possess, from mobile phones to houses to wealth, and you don't always desire what they have, people will respect you and people will love you. So he said to him, "Irghab amma fi aydi an-nas yuhibbuka an-nas." Don't keep desiring everything that other people possess. وهذا يتضمن ترك السؤال الناس أي أن لا تسأل الناس شيئا. So here the Shaykh extrapolates and he says, it's not just a physical desire, like you might have a nice watch, mashallah, so I desire that. Okay, it's not just the fact that I want other things that other people have. No, it's also, here the Shaykh extrapolates and he says it's also asking people for things. Okay, a person is always asking for other people for favors, asking them for money, asking them for their time, asking for things. A person who's constantly asking is also one who's dependent upon other people. So we should also try and stop asking for people and become more independent. لأنك إذا سألت أثقلت عليهم. Why? Because if you keep asking people for things, you become a burden. And then once you become a burden, people try to avoid you. Okay, and we know that many times, even in cases like it comes to mind like fundraising, okay, or in certain masajid or places, people ask you for money, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. They're not doing it for themselves; they're doing it for other causes. But when a person is constantly asking you, naturally the default is setting inside you is you want to give, but you don't want to see that person all the time because you're embarrassed. So you try to avoid that person. So a person who's constantly asking, naturally you will start to avoid that person. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, "Izhad fima inda nas yuhibbuka an-nas." Stop asking people for things. If you keep asking, they won't like you. But if you are the giving person, then they will like you. So be a person who's not dependent upon other people. And we mentioned that hadith before. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Al-yad al-ulya khayrun min al-yad al-sufla," that the hand which is above is better than the hand which is at the bottom. Meaning the one who gives is better than the one who receives the charity. We can also see from this hadith that the companions around the Prophet ﷺ, they were concerned primarily with the akhirah. If you look at all the questions we've taken so far in this book, whenever somebody came, they were always asking about the akhirah. They were never asking about the dunya. In this case, he asked about the akhirah, but he also asked about the goodness of this world. Like, how will people love me? And the Prophet ﷺ, he responded. Okay. The second thing we also extract from this is the ithbat muhabbatullah. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he clearly says that he loves. So from amongst Allah's attributes is the fact that Allah loves certain people or certain things. From amongst them, I'm going to list you a few things so you can make note of this. Allah makes mention in the Quran, "Inna Allah yuhib," that Allah loves, and he makes mentions of 5 or 6 things, and I'm going to mention to you what he says in the Quran. In Baqarah, I'll try to go in order through the Quran. So in Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Inna Allah yuhibbul muhsinin." Allah loves the muhsinin, those people who have ihsan, those people who do good things and they perfect the good things. They do it with perfection. Muhsin. He is aware of Allah and he does things to perfection. So the first thing, the first attribute that Allah loves is al-ihsan. Then the second ayah we find which talks about Allah loves Al-Baqarah in 222, Allah says, "Inna Allah yuhibbu tawwabina wa yuhibbu al-mutatahhirin." Allah loves the people who always making tawbah. Always they're saying astaghfirullah, They always pray extra. They always ask Allah for forgiveness. Allah loves these people. And He says in the same ayah, وَيُحِبُّ الْمُتَطَهِّرِينَ. He loves those people who are always clean. Okay, they're always in a state of wudu, state of ghusl. They're always clean. Their nails are cut. Their hair is looking sharp. Everything, they're good. They look clean. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves the people who are in a state of cleanliness. Then if you move to Surah Al-Imran, Allah says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Those people who have taqwa, Allah tells us that He loves them. The fourth one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الصَّابِرِينَ. The people who have sabr. Okay? And that's a very rare quality, that people have patience. It's easy to talk about patience, but patience, when we're tested, that's when we really know if a person has patience. When he's angry, when he loses something, when he's tested, that's when you understand someone's patient. Allah loves those people who are patient. Then in Ali Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah yuhibbul mutawakkilin. Those people who have tawakkul on Allah, they rely upon Allah. They have tawakkul. They know that Allah is their provider. They know Allah is their sustainer. They know no harm can hit them unless Allah has decreed for it. They have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then in Ma'idah, Surah Al-Ma'idah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah yuhibbul muqsitin. Allah loves those people who are just. Al-Qist. Those people who are just, not just with people around them, they are just with themselves, they are just with their families, they are just with society, they are just with everyone around them. They do not oppress people. Okay, so these are the ayat we find in the Quran that Allah says He loves. Now He also mentions inside the Quran the things that Allah doesn't like. So Allah says in a few ayats, Inna Allah la yuhib. So now we're looking at the opposite. The things that Allah does not like. So Allah detests these things. The first thing He says, Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah, Inna Allah la yuhibbul mu'tadeen. Al-mu'tadeen are those who transgress the limits. Okay, those who exaggerate, those who go too far. Allah does not like the mu'tadeen. And then in Baqarah 205, Allah says, Wallahu la yuhibbul fasad. Allah does not like people who spread corruption in this earth. People who spread lies, corruption, evil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like that. Furthermore, Allah says in Ali Imran, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْكَافِرِينَ. Those who openly disobey Allah, those who openly commit kufr and shirk, Allah does not like those people. In Imran 57, Allah says, وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah does not like those who oppress other people. So you can see here the order of the evilest of crimes. He does not like a dhulm. In Nisa, Allah says, Inna Allah la yuhibbu man kana mukhtalan fakhur. Allah does not like those. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like those who are boastful. Show off. Allah has given you a blessing and you show off. Allah does not like it. And then in Al-Anfal, Allah says, Inna Allah la yuhibbu al-kha'inin. Allah does not like those who are treacherous. People who break their promises. People who are responsible for something and they break their promises. And finally, we find in Surah Al-Qasas 76, Allah says, Inna Allah la yuhibbu al-farihin. Allah does not like those who are happy. That's what it translates as, but what it means is those who are boastful, because this ayah came down on Qarun. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave him lots of wealth. And when he had lots of wealth, he was going around to the people and showing off and boasting. He was very happy because he had so much wealth. And then the people said to him, don't be boastful. Musa said, don't be boastful. Inna Allah la yuhibbul farihin. That Allah does not like those people who are boastful about what Allah has given them. So showing off and being boastful and arrogance and pride, these are from amongst those qualities that Allah does not like. Okay. Alright, good. So, one other concept of Azuhd which needs to be understood. Sometimes in certain cultures people seem to think that Azuhd means that a person who dresses up in very poor clothes or his clothes are ripped, he doesn't eat food, he lives in the jungle. They say this person, he has left the dunya. And the more he's left the dunya, the more pious he is, the more closer he is to Allah. This is a fallacy, this is not true. This is not from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's the opposite. The person who engages with the people, the person who distances himself from excessiveness in the dunya, the person who busies himself with that which is going to benefit me in the akhirah are from amongst the people who have a zuhd. Zuhd is not in your clothes. Zuhd is not in the way you walk. Zuhd is in your heart. Okay? So irrespective of how torn your clothes are, or how smelly you are, or how long it's been since you haven't had a shower or a bath, it doesn't have any connection to do with zuhd. We know, we've mentioned this story many times before, that Umar ibn Khattab, he saw a man walking in a very frail or very soft way, and Umar came and he hit him with a stick and told him to walk properly. And he asked him, why were you walking? And he was saying he has no love for the dunya and he's abstaining from dunya. We see many people like that today. And he hit him and he said, no, that's not the way. Just walk like a man, be strong and be firm. Your zuhd is in your heart. If you don't have an attachment to the dunya, it's not shown in your appearance, it's shown inside of your heart. So Imam Ahmad, he also said that zuhd can be seen in three things. So you can make a subtitle that zuhd is number one in abstaining from prohibited things. Imam Ahmad said, if you want to see zuhd, zuhd is with those people who abstain from prohibited things. Secondly, he said it's in excess in halal things. So yes, we have things that are halal, so prohibited, mubah things, the things that you could do, but when you go excessive in that, then you need to stop, and that's where you have zuhd. So you control even those things. Okay? And the third thing he said, where you can see zuhd, is abstaining from things that make you busy, where there's no benefit, where you could be doing something better. Okay? So you're busying yourself with things that really don't bring much reward, when you could be doing something which is more rewarding. So that is the zuhd. Okay. So that is zuhd. That's really the end of the hadith. I just want to highlight one or two stories, and then we'll move over to the next hadith, which is quite meaty. But zuhd can be seen even in food, in the way we eat. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, it is said that weeks would go by and there would be no meat inside the Prophet's house. They would go by and live off just water and dates for a very long time. So we know even in food, excessiveness in food, the Prophet ﷺ used to refrain from that. We know the very famous story of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who came out of his house and he was hungry. And he came out of his house and he had a stone tied up on his stomach, trying to refrain his hunger. And then when he came out, he met Omar. And then Omar also said to him, he's also very hungry. And he had a stone tied on his stomach. And then they said, let's go to the Prophet ﷺ and let's see what we could do. So they went to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ, he lifted up his garment and they found that he had two stones tied on his stomach. And these were not people who were poor. They were the wealthiest of people in society. But they refrained from excessiveness in the dunya. This is true zuhd. And the fact is, the stone that was tied under their garments, not over their garments, so that people see it. It was only between them and Allah. So we can see that excessiveness is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes. Furthermore, in another story, once Umar ibn Khattab, it was his due to give the sermon or the khutbah, and he was late. And the people said after, asked him, why were you late? And Umar, he responded and he said, Wallahi, I have one thawb, and I washed it in the morning and I was waiting for it to dry, and so I could wear it and come and give the khutbah. This was Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers. And make a comparison of that with the leaders of today. So he had just one thawb which he washed, and he was waiting for it to dry. And because it took a bit longer to dry, he was late to give the sermon. Once again, showing that these people, they didn't care about it. They had, their goals were much higher. They were looking above. We know the story which I mentioned to you before as well, is the story of Abu Ubaidah and Umar. When Umar said to Abu Ubaidah, I want to come to your house. And Abu Ubaidah said, why you want to come to my house? There's nothing for you to see. And he said, no, you were the governor of Syria at that time. He said, I want to come and see your house. So he said, okay, if you want to, come to my house. So he took him to his house, and as they entered into his house, they found in Abu Ubaidah's, in his house, one utensil which he used to eat from, and he found his sword which he used to use for jihad fi sabilillah. And Umar ibn Khattab, after seeing this, he burst into tears and started crying. And he said, Ya Abu Ubaidah, the dunya has changed all of us except for you. And he cried. So once again showing us that Ubaidah was the governor. So he had all the wealth at his disposal. And he was not just, it's not just the fact that he didn't want it, he was working hard and gaining more wealth. But his wealth that he was gaining was putting it back into the people. So he wasn't harboring it and storing it for him and his children and his wife and and the generations to come, but he was putting it back into the people. And that is the true story of Azuhd. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave a warning to the people that become slaves to materialism, become slaves to buying everything, things that they don't need, things that they don't want, but they're constantly after finance, money. Once again, I highlight the issue that I'm not saying we don't have money, I'm not saying we live poor, the opposite, I'm saying we live rich, we live successfully, we live prosperously, we live as much as we can. But we have to understand that money is not our goal. Money is our wasila, it's our path to our greater goal. So here, the Prophet ﷺ in Hadith Abu Hurairah, in this hadith, the Prophet said, he said, Ta'isa abd dinar wa abd dirham. That he said that, you know, Muslims, when they name their sons, they name them abd something. One of the names of Allah, Abdul Rahman, Abdul Wahhab, Abdul Ghani, they will take one of Allah's names and put him abd because you're a slave of that attribute of Allah. Here, Allah is saying abd dinar. He said, cursed be the abd of the dinar, meaning the person who worships money. There are people who wake up, the first thing they think about is money, the last thing they think about is money. They don't even pray because of money. They don't pay the zakat because they're scared because they don't give money. All they're concerned is just finance. It's just material, that's it. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ta'isa abd dinar wa ta'isa abd dirham. That the cursed is the one who worships the dirham and the one who worships the dinar. And he said, these are the people in u'tiya radiya, that if he's given something, money or whatever, he's given something, he becomes happy. وَإِن لَمْ يُعْتَ لَمْ يَرْضَى. And if he's not given anything, he becomes angry and starts getting frustrated. This is the attribute of the one who is described as one who loves the money. So in conclusion of this hadith, zuhud is to abstain from the excessiveness of this dunya to the best of our abilities, and to concern only yourselves with the hereafter. And if you do that, you get two rewards. The first reward you will get is Allah will love you. Allah will love you. And the second thing you get in this dunya, what was the second thing you get? What does the hadith say? The people will love you. Okay? People will respect you. Because if you're always if you're always running around after money, and you're always running around after people, we said also not just asking for money, but also asking people for things. You become a burden upon people, and people don't want to associate with you. So we want to be loved, and the best way to do that is to be independent and to be strong and to give rather than to always be receiving. Okay, on that note, we finish with the Hadith 31. Anyone got any questions on that before we go to Hadith 32? 32. So that's 32. Okay, you got 32? Okay, you guys.
You might, one of you might want to refer to these guys.
Okay, so he's bringing it. He's going to photocopy. Just tend to make 4 or 5. Yeah. So let's move on. Hadith 32. Now this one's a big hadith. Hopefully we can finish it in half an hour. But Hadith 32. An Abi Sa'id ibn Malik ibn Sinan. سنان الخضري رضي الله تعالى عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا ضرر ولا ضرار. حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه. Okay, so Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, he said لا ضرر ولا ضرار. So this hadith, that there is not to be any causing of any harm. Very simple hadith. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. There's nothing more to it. But these two words,
لا ضرر ولا ضرار.
okay, two simple words, but these two words, subhanAllah, have led the ulama to write volumes. Okay, this has been from amongst what we said, Jawami al-Kalim, that the Prophet ﷺ was gifted by saying a few words and having a great meaning. Let us start by talking about the narrator, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri was from the tribe of the Khazraj and he was in Medina. On the day of Uhud, he wanted to join in the battle, but the Prophet ﷺ didn't allow him to fight because he was too young. He was under the age of 12, so the Prophet ﷺ didn't allow him to do it, but his father, who took part in the battle. He was one of the most noble and knowledgeable companions of the Prophet ﷺ. His speciality was the field of Hadith, and it is said that he died in the year 64 in Medina. And he narrated 1,170 Hadith. So he's very, very senior when it comes to Hadith. Okay? Okay. So, looking at the meaning first of the Hadith, that there is no harm. It loosely translates, okay, la darar wa la dirar. They come from the same word, okay, but there's a slight variation. There's a lot of discussion is exactly what it means, but la darar means that there is no harm and no harming of others. Okay? So, la darara wa la dirar, what the word darar means here is that there is no harming of oneself, okay, or causing of harm, and la dirar means no harming of another person. Okay, so not harming yourself or bringing about harm to yourself or bringing about harm to other people. So, in general, if we just look at the overall meaning, it means that there is no harming. Okay, no self-harm, no harming to others, no harming to society. So the principle here is all talking about harm. I think there was one or two on that side. So there is no harming, not just of oneself, but of things as well. Okay. Now when we look at actions, we find that there are 2 or 3 different types of action. The first action is actions that are only meant to bring about harm to others. So there are some actions that are done purely to harm other people. Now this is very easy, this is the default, that these things are haram. To harm another person, to harm yourself intentionally is haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, he says, فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ أَوْ صَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ. So this is just one example of how you can harm another person intentionally. What that means, Allah says, فَأَمْسِكُوهُنَّ, Allah is talking to the men. So remain with your wives بِمَعْرُوف, with goodness. أَوْ صَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوف, or if you can't stay together, then let them go. But let them go بِمَعْرُوف, in goodness as well. Don't cause them harm. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا, and don't keep them with you because you want to cause them harm. You want to, purposely, you want to give them a difficult time. لِتَعْتَدُوا وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ ظَلَمَ نَفْسَهُ, and the one who does that has caused a great harm. How can someone cause harm to his wife? By keeping her. One of the ways which is mentioned is, for example, when a man, he may divorce his wife. Okay, they're not getting along, they want to get on in their own ways, so he divorced his wife. Now we know when the woman is divorced, she goes through what's known as the iddah. Okay, and the iddah, generally speaking, is 3 months and 10 days. So let's say, for example, the man, he's divorced his wife and she's reached towards the end of the iddah. Let's say she's going towards another 3 months, 10 days are remaining. Now he doesn't want her to move on and maybe she will remarry or do whatever. He doesn't want to do that. He's angry, he's jealous of what, he wants to cause her harm. So what does he do? He brings her back. He accepts her back. So she comes back and she's his wife again. Once she becomes his wife again, what does he do? He divorces her again. So what happens? She has to go for another 3 months and 10 days of iddah. This is what Allah is saying, that وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا, that don't keep them just to torture them. That if you're not happy, then he says, فَسَرِّحُوهُنَّ بِمَعْرُوفٍ, let them go in goodness. Let them get on with their life and you get on with your life. Don't cause each other harm. That's just one example of an action that a person can do intentionally to bring about harm, and those things, without any shadow of a doubt, they are haram. So, but now here comes the question. This is where I need you to get your thinking caps on. What about acts that are beneficial to one person, but they're harmful to another? So you might think it's a good act, okay, but the consequence of that action affects another person in a negative way. What do we do now? Okay, especially if it's your right to do that thing. How do we react and how do we treat such actions? Okay, that is really the discussion. So I'll give you an example. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm just going to give you a scenario. For example, I want to build an extension in my house. Okay, I want to extend rooms going upwards. But if I do that, it's great. My family has more space. Invite more guests. We get a studio, put it on rent, whatever. We benefit. But by building that, my neighbor to my right doesn't get any sunlight. Okay, they're completely blocked. Now their room has gone pitch black. Okay, here, what does Islam tell us to do?
Not to build the extension because you are affecting other people.
Consider your neighbours.
But I need that room. There's like 4 of us in the house and 2 of us are sleeping in the box room. I need to get rid of that guy and put him in another room. Okay. That's very generous. If you got an extra £20,000, good one.
Is it to reach a compromise, maybe? So give him something in return for his loss.
Possibly. I'm not gonna... Yeah. So love for yourself, what you love for other people. Okay, fair enough. But you can argue. This is the point. You can argue, like, if I say that I'm not going to build the extension because I'm going to harm my neighbor, I'm going to end up harming myself because I'm going to be squashed in that room with somebody else. So I'm going to be squashed in that room with somebody else. So the harm is coming to me as well. But then if I build it, I'm okay, but then my neighbor has them. This is the discussion. And I just give you one scenario out of many scenarios. What do we do when there is some harm? And let's go into that in some detail. And hopefully you guys will be able to answer the question by the end of the discussion. The first thing that we have to understand. Okay. So one thing that we have to understand is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has told us all over the actions that He has commanded us to do are all actions that lead to goodness. And if He has prohibited us from something, it is because it leads to some harm or it leads to some kind of vice. Allah says, وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah has not put anything inside of the deen that brings about haraj, that brings about harm or brings about hardship in the religions. Okay, so let's move forward. Now, we have what we call in Arabic al-qaida al-fiqhiyya, which is in English called a legal maxim. Okay, so a legal maxim, okay, which is a qaida fiqhiyya. Okay. Apologies for that, I didn't know they were coming. And they took pictures this way, so they didn't take pictures of you. Okay, but they should let us know that they're coming in. Anyway, so the what we're talking about now is legal maxims or qaida fiqhiyya. So those who are well acquainted with law will understand this very well, that Islam provides us with guidelines. Islam didn't talk about every single detail. Okay, we don't know everything is not mentioned in the Quran. Like, we're not going to know whether you can use a bus or you can use a train or whether you can drink Pepsi or drink Coke. Everything is not mentioned in detail. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned some things in detail, and then He has given us, we talked about analogy before, we can use analogy to answer questions as well. But if we can't use analogy, then what we have are legal maxims. They call it qaida fiqhiyya, a rule, a general rule. That's how you can understand it. And these rules we can use to answer many questions. How do we derive these rules? When we look at the smaller rules inside of Islam, the fiqh, okay, like when you look at tahara, how to do tahara, when you look at things, you can't eat this meat, you can't eat that meat, you can eat this meat. When you look at all these little rules, put them together, and we find something which is mushtarak, a common denominator amongst all of them, and we find the reason to why Allah has said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, in different scenarios. We find that there is something common in all of these little scenarios. And these things, when we find the common things, that's called the reason, or in Arabic they call it the illah, the reason to why Allah has said not to do these things. Then we can derive a legal maxim or a rule. And when we don't find clear text from the Quran and Sunnah answering a specific question, we can use these qawaid, these maxims, to answer these questions. Okay? So, this is one of our first ones. So if we're faced with a scenario, now you're going to pretend to be scholars for a little while. If we're faced with a scenario, something comes up, how do you answer that question? Okay, whether it's allowed or it's not allowed. The first thing you do is you turn to Quran and Sunnah. Okay, so you can write this down as well. Yeah. So the steps of a mujtahid, the steps taken to answer questions. Okay, to understand the matter. So the first thing we do, step number one, is that we turn to the Quran and we turn to the Sunnah and see if there's something mentioned inside the Quran and Sunnah about the issue we're dealing with. If we've gone through the whole Quran and Sunnah and we can't find what we're looking for, then the second step we do is we have a look at the works of the scholars, of previous scholars, accepted scholars, and we see if they've discussed this matter somewhere. Okay? Maybe they've seen something that we haven't. Okay? Because they're from the early generations. So we see what they have done, and we look at their works, and they may have used analogy, they may have used different tools. If we don't find, even in the works of the previous scholars, we don't find the answer in there, then what do? We use legal maxims. And this is what we're going to use today. General principles. And I believe that these principles are so general, we can use them in our daily life, not just in Islamic things, but in everything that we do. They're called legal maxims, al-qawaid al-fiqhiyya. Okay? So for example, we mentioned once, I still remember, we talked about legal highs, right? We mentioned the issue of legal highs, whether they're permissible or not. Now, if you open up the Quran and Sunnah, you're not going to find that. Okay? If you go through the works of the scholars of the old, you're not going to find that. So you're going to be stuck. And Islam said that Islam has an answer for every single question. What do you do now? Okay? So either that's wrong, or you're lacking some skills. So to understand the ruling of a legal high, you need to now use these principles. You need to use these common principles which can answer any question you like. So for example, Islamic finance today. Okay? Islamic finance, the contracts now are so complicated and there's so many different things that you're not going to find them directly in the Quran or Sunnah. You're going to find them, either you'll find something similar to that in the old, or legal maxims. You go back to these principles and you use them to understand these matters. Okay? So let's have a look. I'm going to list to you, how many do I have? 7 legal maxims or rules that we derive from this principle. Okay? I'm going to give you 7 that we use to get from this. So the first one, and it's all about harm. All of these legal principles, are all talking about harm. Okay? So 32, and we're talking about harm. So these principles are not just made out of thin air, and scholars didn't make them up. They are taken from the Quran and from the Sunnah. They've looked at all the matters and looked at the common denominator in all of these rules and worked out a principle. So the first one is what we've just taken now. So write in English or in Arabic? English? Okay. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. There is no harming, okay, of one another. Okay, that's the first general principle, which is what we've taken so far. The Arabic of that would be لا ضرر ولا ضرار. Okay. Okay, one example of that. لا ضرر ولا ضرار. So let's say there's a man, a farmer, and he harvests crops. He's renting this land, and his lease is for a year, and his lease will finish in June, let's say. And this year, his harvest, his crops, his wheat, his barley, everything, there's been a delay, some problem. And he's not going to be able to harvest his crops up until July. Okay? So his lease runs out in June, and all of his crops is going to get in July. Now, in this case, what should he do? Does he have to, at the end of June, pack his bags and leave, and all the work is put in all throughout the year for those crops? He doesn't get any of it because his lease is finished. Or is he allowed to extend his lease for a month on the same rate as it was previously, just so he can get his harvest? In this case, what do we do? Extend. Yeah. So in this case, we extend because la darar wa la darar. We do not cause harm because the man put in a whole year of effort. So Islam says to the landlord, here you give him an extension of a month, let him take his harvest, and then you can terminate the contract. This is so that we don't cause harm to one another. The scholars also make mention of a man who he's got a wife and children, and he doesn't financially support his wife and children. He's bringing harm to his wife and children. In this case, it makes mention that there's a harm on the wife and children. So in this scenario, the judge can order this man to force him to pay, and if he doesn't pay, he can also be held or put into prison for not supporting his own family. Okay, la darar wa la dirar, that you cannot bring about harm upon your wife and your children. You will be forced to pay for their sustenance. Okay, that's another example of wala darar wala dirar. Okay, they give another example of a safih. A safih is a man who he's not very intelligent, or a woman as well, not very intelligent, and he spends too much money. Okay, not because she likes spending, but she just doesn't understand the value of stuff. So she might go into a shop, and for something which costs £10, someone will say to her £50 and she'll pay. She doesn't understand, like she's very, very simple and naive like that. So in this case, they call this person a safi, who is not in control of his money. They say that in this case, his wali or his guardians have the ability to refrain that person from using his wealth, because he will end up squandering all of his money. So his parents or whoever's in charge, they are allowed to prevent that person from spending that wealth. Otherwise, he will cause harm to himself. So that's the first principle, and that is there is no harming of one another. The second is, okay, harm is to be prevented. Okay, harm is to be prevented, okay, as much as possible. Okay. So, for example, if a harm has not yet appeared, then it becomes a necessary duty that we prevent this harm from appearing. Prevention is better than cure. Okay. One example that's given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَعَدُّ لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُ مِنْ قُوَّةٍ مِنْ رِبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the believers to always be physically prepared, that maybe there'll come a time somebody may attack you or somebody may harm you. So always be ready, so you're ready to prevent any kind of harm. There's no harm now, but you're ready to protect yourself, or you're ready to prevent any kind of harm coming your way. Okay? So harm is to be prevented from appearing as much as possible. Another example of that is defending yourself. So what if you're outside and you're attacked? Can you defend yourself?
Yeah.
To what extent can you defend yourself?
Very equivalent.
Okay, so as much as possible. So let's just say that somebody's outside, at the bus stops and starts pushing you or doing something. You can defend yourself, but the principle here is as much as possible, as much as you need. So that doesn't mean now somebody pulls out a knife and stabs the person because he said he pushed me. Now I'm just defending myself. No, that wouldn't be justified. But if a person attacked you and you ended up getting into a fight, and the one who was defending himself, punched the other person, bruised his eye, broke his arm, something happened, then Islamically, I'm talking inside a court, of course, this would be justified because he's protecting himself or herself to legitimate means. So once again, harm must be prevented as much as possible. Okay. The third one is that harm is to be removed, or the third one is harm is to be removed. Okay, harm is to be removed or put to an end. The harm is to be removed or put to an end. Whenever harm exists, we must try our very best to remove this kind of harm. For example, if a person builds something on or near a public roadway, okay, so he decides to build something out into the street or something in a public property or something like that, which you know someone's going to walk over and fall, and they may break their leg or hurt themselves. That thing has to be removed immediately. Okay, somebody, for example, out, maybe not out in the countryside or in back home, decides to build a well, but he decides to build a well near a place where people walk. Okay, so in this case, people may fall into the well, or it may cause harm to animals. So in this case, that has to be removed. Okay, so if there's any form of harm, that harm has to be removed, and that is another principle. Okay. The fourth one, harm is not to be removed with a similar harm. Okay? You cannot remove harm with another harm. What does that mean? So, let's say, for example, there's two people and they're both very hungry, they're starving, they need food. One of them has food. Okay? Now, in order for the one who doesn't have food, in order to save himself, he eats his food. He's in harm. He's hungry or he's thirsty. So to save himself, he takes the other person's food or drink, and he saves himself, but he causes harm to other people just because he was harmed. You're not allowed to remove a harm with another harm. Okay? So you can't save yourself and then pass over the harm to somebody else. Okay? The harm itself must be removed, but you can't pass over the harm to another person. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. The fifth one. Okay. The fifth one is that a greater harm a greater harm can be removed by a lesser harm. Okay, a greater harm can be removed through a lesser harm. For example, if, once again, living in an Islamic environment, let's say we've got rich people, we've got poor people. The rich people have all given their zakat. Yeah, they've all given their zakat, but yet we still find that we have poverty. There's still poor people. What do the rulers do now? What can they do now?
Take more.
They can take more. Exactly. The ruling elite can then request again or order the rich people again to give an extra tax, to give extra to remove this poverty. There is harm, and the harm is that we've got poor people, and that harm is far greater than the harm of the rich people losing a little bit of more wealth. So you've got two harms. You've got the harm of poor people dying of hunger and thirst, but you've got the harm of rich people losing more, giving away more wealth than they should be. But in this case, because you've got two harms, you look at which one's worse, and that's the poor people. So to remove that greater harm, we can bring about that harm, and it removes the greater harm. So this is another principle that we can find. Okay. Also, we know, this is a very famous one, number 6 is taking the lesser of the two evils. Okay? If you're faced with a decision and you've only got two options in front of you, okay, and both of them are bad. Both of them are bad, but you have to choose one of them. You have to do one of those two. You're in the scenarios. Then you look at which one is less harmful and you take that decision. Okay? So you go with the lesser harm. Okay. One example I came with that, one example is, for example, taking the two lesser evils. A person who smokes, okay, is an addicted smoker. Now that's a harm. Now this person, he says, look, I can't give up smoking. He says, Sheikh, I've got two options in front of me. I've smoked for a long time, there's no way I can give up. Either I continue smoking 20 cigarettes a day, or I start using these vapors. Okay, those are the two options in front of me. What would you recommend? I don't know much about the vapors, but what I do know is they're not as harmful as cigarettes. So they're the lesser of the two harms. So in this case, you can say to the person, you can use the vapor for a time until you can move over and remove yourself from smoking. So once again, you've got two options here, the lesser of the two evils. So they've got an option. The person says, look, there's no way I can go from 20 cigarettes to nothing. I just can't do it. So can I move over to vapor? Then you have to be the one who makes the decision, and you say, okay, in that case, use that until you're able to let go of those as well. Okay. So when you face the two evils, go with the lesser of the two evils. Okay. Even sometimes when it comes to selecting, your leadership, okay, both parties that you've got in front of you, they're both evil. They're both useless people. They're both bring no good to you. One may bring you a little bit of good, and the other will bring you no good. Then some may say, in this case, you can go with the one that's going to bring you a little bit of good. Okay, I'm speaking generally. Let's go to number 7. Okay, preventing evil.
Are these principles taken in isolation?
Meaning?
Like, say where it says harm is not to be removed with a similar harm.
Yeah.
For a cigarette example, they're essentially taking away one harm, but then replacing with the vapor, which is still harm.
But it's a lesser of the harm.
Lesser harm, isn't it?
So I guess.
Just similar.
So it's not. This is why I said I don't know vapor. If the chemists say that vapor is as harmful as cigarettes, then that's not allowed. But if they say that it's much less harmful than cigarette, then it would apply. Okay. But that also has to be taken into context. So, for example, if somebody says that, look, I've been drinking all my life. I drink a glass of brandy before I go to sleep every night. I can't give up. So what I'll do is I'll have a pint of beer instead until I can give that up as well. In this case, no, you can't do that. Okay, because that's clear cut haram. That has to be just taken off. On an individual case, maybe on an individual case you might, but generally we don't use that as a principle. Okay, so that cannot be, because it's clear cut. Okay, now here, what was I saying? Preventing evil. Okay, so okay, this is the long one. I'll read it out. Preventing evil takes precedence over bringing about good. When I explain it, it'll become much easier. Islam gives more importance, more preference to stopping bad actions than it does in bringing good actions. Our emphasis should be on removing evil, more on the fact of bringing about good. Because by removing evil, if you look at it, by default will bring about good. Okay? But by doing the good, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to remove the evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to remove evil before the good. That's obviously if you've only got two choices. If you can do both, then you do both. So if an act, for example, brings about an equivalent or similar amount of harm and benefit, then preventing this harm will take precedence over producing its benefit. For example, are we allowed to curse other people's faiths and religions and gods? No. Yeah? Why not?
Because I was back.
That's it. Because the harm. So if you disrespect their gods, they will disrespect your God. You will harm Allah. Therefore, that's why it's not allowed. Okay? And Allah says in the وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. That if you curse their gods, then they will respond back and curse Allah. And if you did that, who's going to get the sin for that? Not them, it's you. Because you caused that. Therefore, it says here, so preventing evil, don't say that. Okay? So preventing evil takes precedence over benefits. For example, one of the biggest trades we find, illegal trades we find in the world, is that of selling drugs. Okay? That Islam has said that is obviously it's not allowed. We're not allowed to sell drugs. One can say it's a great benefit. We can benefit our economies. So countries that are strong in drugs, for example, Afghanistan has lots of opium. Someone can say that this third world country, if they start trading opium openly, they can become very rich. So it's a benefit. But then we say no, there is a harm. Those people who are going to take that heroin, you're going to ruin their lives. So the preventing of the harm is more important than you becoming economically successful. Okay. So once again, preventing evil takes precedence over any kind of benefit. Okay, I think that's enough. That's what I have for this qaida. These legal maxims, they're used in law, they're used in court. So Islamic solicitors or lawyers, these are what they will use when they stand in front of the judge and they will defend their cases. These are the principles that are used. At this stage, you've just seen them, so you've been introduced to them. But when we go into details and you look at examples, it really becomes refreshing, and you can see how these are very relevant to our times. You're not going to get the answer for all of your Islamic questions directly through the Quran and Sunnah. You're going to get it through principles. Okay? And that's where the scholar really has to work hard to see whether this principle applies in your case or not. Yeah? Is there any questions? Yeah.
Are these legal maxims apply for other things, not only harm?
This one is for harm only, but then there are other subjects as well. So there's 4 or 5 major legal maxims. One of them is that actions are judged by intentions. Okay, and then that has branches under it. So even in court, for example, you're innocent until proven guilty. So your actions are judged by intent. Did you mean to commit that crime? So these will break down. Another one will be al-yaqinu la yuzalu bi-shak. That certainty is not removed by doubt. Okay, and then there will be some legal matters pertaining to that. Yeah. So there is a field of different. So this one's about harm only.
Going back to that extension example, what would be the answer?
There is.
It's 45,000 pounds for one extension.
So here.
Just because if you look at a different one, you can come up with a different conclusion.
Yeah, you can. So after looking at these maxims, that's a good idea. What do you guys think? Someone put their hand up and just tell me what you from looking at that example of the extension. Yeah, what would you say? Which principle would you use, and what outcome would you come with? Because there's no definite answer. It's all about you justifying your case. Imagine you're a solicitor. The 2 people are in court. The neighbour is saying no, you're saying yes, and you've got a judge. What is the right thing? What would you do, and why would you say what you do? You've got a hand in the back here.
If you try and use the lesser of 2 evils, then perhaps you could make an extension in a different direction, going out. So you can stop the space, but not just have the...
Good. That's one alternative. Yeah, so he's thinking outside the box. Okay, good. Yeah.
Similar situation happened in Pakistan. I wonder if these apply. They looked at how many people benefit from certain things and how many people,
Yeah.
is it harmful too. So the greater, one, the more people benefit from it.
Very good. So that actually, what they did in Pakistan there, that is an Islamic principle. Believe it or not, that's the Islamic principle that if there's a harm that's affecting, I didn't write it here, but it falls under this one. If there's a harm that's affecting society as a large, you can remove that even if the harm is still affecting a minority of people. Okay? So these are things that only once you start understanding Islam you can appreciate. And some people will say, look at these people, they're causing us harm. But when you look at the bigger picture, maybe there was no other alternative. That these people may have to suffer a little bit in order for the majority of people to benefit. So yeah, that might be one option. So you look at numbers, okay, or the extent of the harm, and then you go with the one that's the lesser of the harm. Good. Anyone else? I saw some hands on that side. No? No?
It might get a bit technical, but if you had a certain amount of great coming out, good benefit coming out of the decision, and the harm coming out of that decision was more than half of the greater coming out of that decision, would the decision be, prohibited, or would it be allowed?
So you're saying the harm would be greater?
Greater than the half of, the good coming out of it.
Yeah, if the harm is greater, so if it's the harm is 51% and the benefit is 49%, then you wouldn't go with it. Okay? Even if it's that small amount. That's the general principle. Obviously, you need to go into the details of each case. I'm just giving you the principle. So then you wouldn't go with it. Yeah.
Okay, just back to the extension. So say if you built the extension, but what if you couldn't confirm that it will cause harm to someone else?
Excellent. Okay, that's a very good point. So here, when we're talking about harm, it's confirmed harm. Yeah, it's not speculation. So it's not like, for example, you got an auntie next door and she's always giving you a headache about everything you do, and she says that no, you're going to take away this much percentage of my life, and you know most of the time she's always complaining. So in that case, it's probably not really true. But if it's confirmed, then you can use the principles. But if it's just speculation, then it doesn't even fall in here in the first place. You have to confirm the benefit and you have to confirm the harm. The same example when we came to smoking and vaporing, I just gave that as a random example, but you have to confirm whether vaporing actually is more or less harmful than the cigarette. Yeah? Anything else before we... Yeah?
For a lot of these principles, you would have to know what harm actually is defined as, and what would be the lesser of two evils. I guess you have to go back to the Quran to figure out what that actually is.
You could, if you bring an example, you can break it down. But yeah, you can say that as well. The word defines harm and benefit is defined in the Quran. So everything that is made haram is a harm, and everything that is made halal is a benefit. But not everything is mentioned inside the Quran as well.
But are these principles also therefore to state the law of the land?
That's exactly what it is.
So like in our country here, extensions that still have some grounds, legal grounds, you know, they consider light and everything of your neighbour.
So you'll find like legal maxims. Every community or society has legal maxims. So even in Pakistan, they'll have them, and they'll fall back onto a lot of Islamic ones, because that's where the constitution was drawn up from. And even if you look at some of Western legal maxims, how the British law is or the American law is, we find they might have some Islamic ones, but then they might have others as well, because they're more advanced and they've been able to maintain the social order, whereas we lost ours and we're trying to rebuild it. So you'll find a lot of their systems are here. One other legal maxim that we talked about last week, I think it was, we talked about the issue of istislah, meaning innocent until proven guilty. That's an Islamic legal maxim. And we had that 1,440 years ago, where the Prophet said that you can't judge a person until you bring evidence to show that he's guilty. And that was applied in the times of the Prophet. Whereas now we find that in modern day legal systems. Yeah? Is that it? Anything else?
One question, in an Islamic state, when people are paying zakat and ushur, is government still allowed to do further taxation?
Yeah, we mentioned that before. If the zakat is not sufficient, it's not fulfilling the duties, then the government can extend and take further taxation. That's permissible. Okay. All right.
Are these fixed as well? So they haven't changed for over time, or they can't be added to?
They can be added to, but you have to prove your case.
Oh.
So if you're going to add a principle, then you have to prove that principle having the reasoning behind that principle is common in Islamic principles. Yeah. So if you open up a fiqh book of jurisprudence and you find like 50 of the rules, the Prophet is saying don't do this, don't do this, and amongst them the common denominator amongst them is all harm, then you can produce something like that. But if you don't have a case, then no, it won't stand. All right. Okay. On that note, we will conclude. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu feekum. We will see you next week with Hadith number 33. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to pray here as well. If anybody wants to stay and pray, if not, you can pray in the masjid or.